Well, welcome to session 14. The first part of this session is devoted to presenting the argument that promotes the unhooking of pay from performance. This is in contrast to the text that somewhat argues for hooking compensation and performance together. Now, I must admit that I'm not a proponent, and I'm probably ill-equipped to make the argument for equal pay distribution or across-the-board increases effectively. Like the authors, I'm a proponent of hooking pay to performance. But that in no way implies that you have to hold that position as well. I present it to allow you to explore both ends of the continuum, and then you can make up your own mind. I hope we can have a spirited discussion in the discussion forum as well. If, however, compensation is hooked to performance, a sound performance management program is essential, as you will see. So what is a good performance management program? Darned if I know. There must be a million different performance management programs ranging from we don't bother with managing performance to very elaborate, involved, and researched programs. Some are absolutely ineffective and worthless, and some are exceptional and very effective. And they are all different. And I'm convinced that the best wouldn't work in many other organizations other than the one they're working in now. In other words, copying is not a good philosophy. And even the best may not work in their organizations in another 10 years. In other words, performance management systems must be flexible, reviewed, and changed as necessary. Performance management programs are very organization specific, and all organizations and organizational cultures are different. How many times have I said that? So what works in one doesn't work in another, just like people. What works for me doesn't work for you. Doesn't make you wrong, just different. Therefore, I haven't tried to give you a program you can emulate. I've tried in this session to present the priorities or factors that make performance management program effective. The latter part of this session is devoted to that goal. Let me give you an example of performance being linked to pay in daily life. Let's say you hire someone to install a new carpet in your home. Now, it's accepted practice for you as the customer to pay some money up front and then a sum on completion of the job. If the work is done poorly or not on time, the first reaction is not to pay until the job is completed satisfactorily. If it is not completed to your satisfaction, or at least to the satisfaction of the agreement, how many of you would send in the final payment anyway? You see, performance is hooked to pay. If it wasn't, we would always pay up front. And also, we are often willing to pay more for the reputation of quality work. Why should it be any different in the workplace? Hooking pay to performance means that work performed must consistently meet the standards set. Not a hard formula to understand. The problems arise when we try to define the standards, are defined consistently, or for that matter, even defining the methods used to measure the performance. The logic of the concept is undeniable. Doing it effectively is quite another matter. Much of the effectiveness is based on honesty, and honesty can be brutal. Honesty can be uncomfortable. Honesty puts us in a dilemma of how do we respond. When my wife walks in a new dress and says, "How do I look?" I'm always happy and relieved if she looks great. But if she doesn't look great, what do I say? I want to be honest, but I also want to live. Obviously, the performance management issue is not as extreme as this, but it certainly makes managers and employees uncomfortable. But it can be effective if done properly. Also, if any of you have any suggestions as to an effective way to handle my wife's question and be honest, I'm open to suggestions. Oh, by the way, did I mention that performance is hooked to reward in this class? The payoff for you is a grade. You get a better grade for better performance. Session 14. In this session, we actually covered 2 chapters in the text. The chapters are very closely related, with the first providing evidence of where pay for performance works and doesn't work. The second chapter provides information on various pay for performance plans. Both chapters are very good and round out our discussion of compensation. We've spent much time discussing base pay. It's appropriate due to the importance of base pay for organizations and employees. Remember, it's what we build on. And now we are prepared to start building. But why do we have to worry about base pay? Why can't we just implement some of the cool compensation programs discussed in the chapter on pay for performance plans, or programs we have read about? Well, we can. Nothing is stopping us except for the needs and expectations of employees. I, as an employee, need some assurances. I need some security. Getting paid for my personal performance or the performance of the organization is great, but there is so much involved in the success of an organization and my contribution that I can't control. I need to have a base with which to support my family, regardless of the organization's situation. I can't tell my creditors, sorry, but the company says they've had a bad month. I have to have a certain amount of money I can count on as an income. If I and the company perform well, I would expect more reward. If the company does poorly, I still need that base amount. So employees at all levels want and need a base. That goes for CEOs, vice presidents, salespeople, managers, truck drivers, janitors, pro football players, etc. But remember that pot of money I've talked about? It's still there. It's still a limiting factor. Any incentive or performance-based plan must still fit into that pot of money. Therefore, all incentive or pay for performance plans require that we cost them to ensure we don't overspend our budget. There is some truth in the often used argument that these incentive plans will improve performance and thus will at least partially pay for themselves. But that's only if the conditions are right for them to work. If not, they cost money. Therefore, we must allocate some funds to the base pay program and also leave room for incentives and fancy, cool programs that provide extra motivation. But incentives and merit pay are not the only options. Some prefer equal distribution of our compensation funds. Everyone gets an equal share. Let's consider the issue of granting equal or across-the-board increases versus pay for performance. Yes, some people and organizations prefer to grant pay increases equally to base pay or in a lump sum rather than basing rewards on performance. Unions present the most consistent and deliberate argument for equal increases. They are generally very opposed to pay for performance. Those in favor of equal distribution are often also proponents of an entitlement philosophy. Everyone is not only entitled to a pay increase, but they are entitled to an equal pay increase. I should point out that it really isn't as simple as an either-or choice. There are actually ways that an organization can combine pay for performance and across-the-board increases into a structured pay plan. I've actually used equal distribution and pay for performance in the same organization. You can look at it as a continuum with equal pay on one end and absolute pay for performance on the other. And I must admit that I am strongly in favor of pay for performance. By the way, that doesn't mean that you have to be in favor of it. I believe compensation is also an important component of performance management. I have used across-the-board increases or equal percentage increases in the past, but generally try to move an organization towards a substantial portion of pay for performance over time. In defining the two ends, equal pay means that everyone gets the same amount, usually at the same time. Pay for performance means that pay increases are strictly based on job or organization performance, and some get much more than others, and some actually get zero. As I said, there are a lot of options in between these 2 points. The text also covers some of these options. But let's start this discussion with the assertion on my part that if we're going to grant increases on the left of the scale or equally, our pay distribution issue is rather simple. We merely have to determine how big our fund is and if the distribution is going to be an equal amount of money or equal percentage of money. You can't have both. An equal amount of money equals an unequal percentage, and an equal percentage equals an unequal amount of money. Isn't it ironic that there is actually inequity in equality? Once we make those two decisions, we merely divide that by the number of employees to determine the amount or percent to grant each employee. And if we take this route, performance management and performance appraisals are much less important in the organization. Problem solved. It also follows that if using equal pay, compensation programs and structure have less impact on the functioning of the organization. Compensation is not a reward or punishment, but a method of keeping up with the Joneses or keeping pace with the marketplace. We are paying only for tasks performed and not the ancillary actions or benefits such as innovation, drive, initiative, dedication, loyalty, knowledge, skill, etc. I don't believe in equal distribution because we are not equal as people. The difference in these two positions are not just differences in methods and techniques. They represent fundamental differences in how we see the world. I am not a strong believer in equality. I believe equality can never be achieved because we are all inherently unequal. Those on the opposite end of the continuum believe equality can be reached, or at least it is a goal that should have prominent priority in all the things we do. And this strong belief in equality leads to a strong belief that individuals are entitled to a certain base level of something. People are entitled to education, healthcare, minimum wage, etc. And these entitlements are often expressed very specifically. I believe, representing the other side, that entitlements are much more general and decidedly not specific. I believe that people are entitled to equal opportunity, for example. Therefore, when confronted with the question of how to distribute compensation funds, those on the equality end of the continuum jump to ensure that equality is the primary goal, since all are entitled to a certain level of compensation or share of revenue. Those on my side jump to measuring those amenities such as dedication, dependability, loyalty, skill, knowledge, etc., to find a meaningful way to distribute the revenue share. And in that quest, my side is willing to accept great inequality in the distribution. And that is where those on the equality side start making their points. How much inequality of distribution is acceptable, and how do we measure the amenities that define the inequality? And more importantly, who's doing the measuring? Now, these concerns are not based on paranoia, they are based on experience. Situations where the amenities affected included things such as sex and race actually happened in the workplace. It's called discrimination. Situations where the measuring and those doing the measuring were influenced by how cooperative or friendly or submissive an employee was to management were abundant. And many of these inappropriate considerations are invisible. We can't see or prove them, but we strongly suspect that they're in play. How do we negate these inappropriate considerations? Everyone gets the same. Equality is their answer. So what's the answer? Should we distribute funds equally, or should we base the distribution totally on performance? Well, you might expect after years of experience in the field, I have found the answer. I don't know. I suspect I have the right answer, but I don't know. Of course, I always suspect I have the right answer. I also suspect the right answer really depends more on how you do it than what you do. The right answer in one organization is decidedly the wrong answer in another organization. The right answer in one point of time is decidedly the wrong answer at another point in time. Performance appraisals have been linked to annual increases in pay for many decades in a large number of organizations. That doesn't mean they were effectively linked, but they were linked. Recently, some have advocated disengaging performance appraisals from the compensation system. They argue that, quote, we all know that performance reviews are demoralizing to both employers and employees. However, it seems like we are all stuck in a rut as we do not know what the alternatives would be, end quote. This is from the following website, and you can see the website in the slide. I don't think performance reviews are demoralizing to good employees, nor are they demoralizing if they are conducted properly. And finally, the following website is adamantly against pay for performance and represents a spirited argument with an example of a company culture that evolved in that direction. Quote, performance reviews that are tied to compensation create a blame-oriented culture. It's well known that they reinforce hierarchy, undermine collegiality, work against cooperative problem solving, discourage straight talk, and too easily become politicized. They're self-defeating and demoralizing for all concerned. Even high performers suffer because when their pay bumps up against the top of the salary range, their supervisors have to stop giving them raises, regardless of achievement. End quote. Some of this argument I agree with, but believe much of it is an argument against implementing and using faulty performance appraisal systems more so than linking performance to pay. If performance is linked to pay based on ineffective performance appraisals or are executed by managers unskilled in feedback and leadership, of course they will be detrimental or fail. Effective linkage of pay and performance is complex and dependent upon many variables, including effective management skills. Once again, if we distribute our funds equally, the left side of the continuum, then performance appraisals and some of the performance management and compensation becomes less important. The issues disappear. But as we move towards the right side of the continuum or towards pay for performance, the importance of performance appraisals and performance management becomes infinitely more important. Actually, important is an understatement. It becomes critical. Assuming we can develop or enhance a performance management system, I believe that not having pay linked to performance is an injustice to good performing employees and forces the organization to trust that good performance will merely happen. It states that an organization will accept performance and not manage performance. Is pay linked to performance a reward versus punishment issue? You bet it is, and I believe that reward punishment has merit. Those who perform should be rewarded, and those who don't should be punished. The punishment is in the form of withdrawing rewards that others receive. Sounds harsh, but isn't that how we learn? Isn't that how we improve? During this portion of our discussion, I will use the book High Performance Pay by Patricia K. Zingham and Jay Schuster as a frequent reference. Rather than repeat this over and over, I'll merely reference the book and you will know my source. There is a distinction between performance management and performance appraisal. Performance management is defined as a series of activities designed to ensure that the organization gets the performance it needs from its employees. Performance appraisal is defined as the process of determining how well employees do their jobs relative to a standard and communicating that information to them. Both of these definitions come from Human Resource Management by Robert Mathis, John Jackson, and Sean Valentine. In other words, performance management is a broad topic, and performance appraisal is just a tool used in performance management. Performance management is not performance appraisals. The book states, quote, it is important to remember that performance management is much more than a forms design exercise. If you have a solid performance management process, the forms document it. It is the goal setting, feedback, coaching, review, discussion, and exchange of performance information that makes for top-notch performance management, end quote. Unfortunately, I believe that many performance management systems are merely paper. The goal of many managers is to complete the form so they don't get in trouble, or to complete the form so that employees will get a raise, or to complete the form so they can check another box off of their to-do list. I realize that is harsh, but my point is that managers have many goals other than participating in a strong and effective performance management system. During the feedback part of the performance appraisal, their goal is to get out of the room rather than share information with employees that could enhance career growth, positive contribution to the organization, and improve performance. I think performance management in many organizations is a mess.
How do we create or modify our performance management system to support pay for performance? How do we create a system that ultimately transforms pay from an expense to an investment in improving the performance of the organization? Well, first, we must accept certain realities. Our performance management system will value some employees more than others. We will not be vested equally. In fact, we will work hard to not let equality interfere with our treatment of employees. But inequality will be defined by performance and not by race and sex and religion or any other protected classes. We will accept that the poor performing employees will be defined as such by clearly communicated standards. Poor performing employees will be released from the organization after a reasonable opportunity for rehabilitation. Strong performers will be highly valued and receive rewards commensurate with their contribution. Average employees will be highly valued as well, but will be told they were average and valued employees. There will be no doubt among employees as to their status as poor, average, or strong performer. These actions will be foremost in our culture as a function of honesty rather than a pursuit of organizational profit and success. Such honesty is our obligation and our primary obligation to employees. We are not obligated to protect employees' feelings or self-esteem. We also must trust employees to act maturely on honest feedback. To develop a pay-for-performance system, including the values defined above, the book lists 10 priorities. The steps belong to the authors of the book, but the explanations are largely mine. Number 1, define performance clearly. What does good look like? I tried to clearly define good performance for you in the documents posted in the first session of this class. One cannot expect performance standards to be met if those standards are not specified. Performance standards are not just about what is expected today, but also about what is expected in the future. This definition of performance standards is not only used to determine pay increases. The performance measurement may also be used to identify training needs, eligibility for promotions, incentive rewards, eligibility for new assignments, and more. Also, the performance measurement applied to pay may include the objectable and measurable things such as sales volume, cost savings, productivity, etc. It may also include the subjective aspects of performance such as teamwork, leadership, communication, and so on. Can we possibly expect to measure performance and then use that result to hold people accountable, reward people, motivate people, and improve the organization if we don't or can't define the performance criteria? Number 2, engage managers in helping you improve present practices. Managers are the primary users of performance management programs. Shouldn't they have input into the development, maintenance, and evaluation of such programs? Adopting a restrictive posture that says performance management is the exclusive purview of HR or upper management is like buying a house without consulting my wife. Does that sound like a good idea? Suddenly our dream house becomes a nightmare. Involve managers in the process. Allow them to have real input. After the performance management program has been implemented, allow managers to critique and suggest changes and improvements. In short, create interest, create ownership, create credibility in the program. If I purchase that house without consulting my wife, I will likely be living in it by myself. If you create a performance management program without the continuous and genuine input, you will be living that performance management program by yourself. In this case, failure looks like living alone. Number 3, customize to your organization. Every organization is different. Every organization has a different culture. Every organization values different things. Some organizations have a strong entitlement orientation, and some organizations have a very entrepreneurial orientation. You must match your performance management solution to where your organization is now and where it wants to go. The solution must be specific to your organization. Number 4, provide role models. Will your performance management program be a bunch of words on paper, or will it be an active process that improves people in the organization? Without role models and sponsors, it can be nothing more than words on paper. Top executive management must not only be supportive, but they must actively participate and value the program. You must develop strong sponsors and valid success examples. Nothing overcomes words, both in positive and a negative way, like action. Role models and sponsors provide the action examples that convince people the program works and can contribute to their individual career and success of the organization. Number 5, initiate culture change to support honest feedback and dialogue. Consider culture in the development and maintenance of the performance management solution. Consider the culture that exists presently and the culture you may want to evolve into. A strong performance management program will reward the behaviors that support the culture or drive the organization to change cultures, either in a positive or a negative way. Take an athletic team, for example. All athletic teams are strong on performance management, and more than one athletic team has failed to maintain a winning culture or driven a losing culture towards a winning culture merely by how they manage the performance of a few key players. How you manage performance and behavior determines what performance and behavior you will receive in the future. It works with athletic teams, kids, employees, and any group of people. Number 6, update and post performance goals as directions change. Performance goals always change with time and situations. Once you set the standards, emphasize in number 1, they are not forever. As the market changes, competitors change, technology changes, customers change, leadership changes, the organization changes. As things change, performance goals and standards must change as well. People need to know how they are doing now and how they are expected to do in the future. How employees are performing towards obsolete standards is of no use to anyone. Number 7, engage employees in the performance management process. I mentioned engaging managers in number 2, and you should engage employees for many of the same reasons. A self-evaluation helps employees understand the process and their understanding of performance standards. Encourage employees to take the lead on preparing and implementing their own development plans. So say the authors of the book, and I agree. Number 8, train raters and ratees. Training should accomplish 2 goals. One is to foster understanding and insight into the performance management process. The second is to put employees and managers at ease so the event of performance management doesn't become an obstacle to the process of performance management. Some employees and managers dread the performance appraisal event so thoroughly that they miss the point is to provide honest feedback on both sides and therefore to provide great opportunity for improvement on both sides. Performance management may be viewed as punishment, but it is really opportunity. Number 9, bring performance management out of the closet. Performance appraisals in particular have been secretive in the past. They should not be. Managers should seek input from others in the organization as to how individuals are performing. They should seek examples of both good performance and not so good performance. Performance management should not be whispered, but should be shouted in the organization, particularly the positive aspects. Everyone should be on the same page, and one way to ensure that is to make performance management a normal topic of discussion. Managers connecting with one another and discussing examples of good and poor performance is important to keeping everyone on the same page. This continual discussion about performance has always been a part of the fabric of every organization in which I have implemented pay for performance. Such discussion also makes it easier to relate performance standards to employees in an understandable and acceptable manner. Now, I don't necessarily mean divulging confidential information about the performance of individuals, but managers and employees alike should feel free to challenge the process and use the process. Managers should frequently refer back to performance appraisal results to encourage good behavior or to find other behavior that is not acceptable. Employees should know where they stand and seek opportunities for self-improvement. Number 10, communicate and coach. The bold line or thread of communication has been present in all of the other 9 steps we had discussed. It's a given. Performance management will not exceed nor will any other initiative without good communication. Good communication may get you there, but great communication will make the solution excel. Of course, poor communication will turn a positive into a negative, and it will turn success into failure. To summarize my thoughts, our pay structures provide the base on which we can build innovative and effective pay options. There is a continuing argument as to how to distribute the allocated compensation funds to employees. One way is to distribute funds equally to all employees. Another way is to distribute funds based on individual contribution and performance. The text offers other options, but they also include these options. For example, if we grant bonuses, do we grant equal bonuses to everyone, or do we grant a differential bonus based on the level in the organization or perceived contribution? If an organization chooses not to use equal distribution, there must be a process in place to differentiate contribution or performance on an individual or team level. That process is, in most cases, a performance appraisal or performance management system. And an effective performance management system is the centerpiece of successfully allocating funds differently to employees. The above 10 tips are just an example of what a good performance management system would look like. There are probably thousands of other examples in the literature. Regardless of which guidelines you choose, you must ensure that your process and subsequent actions are based on a system that is perceived as fair and effective to employees and the outside world. In my opinion, organizations have a choice to either manage performance or to hope that performance happens. I opt for performance management, and I also believe that compensation is an effective tool in that management process. Using compensation as a tool in performance management ensures that compensation becomes an investment rather than an expense. And isn't that what we set out to do in the first place?